Store podcast.
Groovy. No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Great Scott, get away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing The Craft, the movie from 1996 that came out in the same era as Scream. Actually came out earlier in the year than Scream. Came out in May, as opposed to Scream came out later in the year. And before the podcast, we talked a second just about, like, in the 90s, there was this run of all these different movies that, like, feel somewhat connected, despite the fact that there's no, like, story similarities, but, like, Nev Campbell's in The Craft, and then in Scream, and then
It's just that, like, late 90s tone, I think, that they all have. You know?
Well, it's also like the aesthetic and the music is just all they're all the same.
well, yeah, and then Skeet Ulrich is in The Craft and in Scream,
Yeah.
and then The Craft had, I guess I'll pronounce this incorrectly, but Fairuza Balk, who, if you don't, like, you've seen her in a bunch of stuff. She was in The Waterboy and had a very distinctive look in the late 90s. But
Yeah, the goth look style.
then,
Or white trash, as she is.
Yeah, goth
tries
white
to break
trash.
the curse from in this film.
Yeah.
But before we discuss The Craft and all that, we'll go through recent news and things we've been watching. And for recent news, there's been a few trailers that have been released recently. And one of them is there's a new trailer for It. Now, I know that Sean and I did not watch it. Derek, did you watch the new trailer for It?
No, I haven't.
I didn't watch it because I'm already going to see the movie. So typically, once I've decided I'm going to see something, I stop watching trailers just because a lot of trailer companies are like, because a lot of times the directors themselves have nothing to do with the trailers. It's usually like the marketing arm of the studio.
Well, spoiler alert, this is a book and a made-for-TV movie, so I don't see this remake going too far away from the original source material or the 90s version of Tim Curry.
Well, for
So
me,
I don't think you can be shocked about what you see in the trailer.
Well, but for me, I've only seen, like, bits and pieces of the TV movie because I know it's supposed to be that good, and I've never read the book. So this is going to be like a 70% new experience because I know a lot of, like, things that happen in it, but still.
Well, too, like, even if you know all the story bits, like, you don't want to see them ruin a lot of the scares. Because there's been a few different horror films where they put, like, all of the scare bits in the trailer. So you watch the movie, you already know what to expect. Like, so I just didn't watch the trailer. I mean, the trailer could be devoid of anything like that. I just know that we're going to see the movie regardless. So I just haven't watched the trailer because I'm like,
I would just like people to make trailers of the characters in the film doing stuff that has nothing to do with the movie. Like, you just have Pennywise making, like, clown balloons or something. You know, something stupid that's really arbitrary, doesn't matter.
Like, there's been, I don't know if it was Woody Allen or who, but I remember seeing, like, some trailers from a long time ago where the director just stands there and tells the audience about what the movie is, and like that's it.
Yeah, no, Alfred Hitchcock did that, I think, for Psycho and some other stuff.
That's what I was thinking of, Hitchcock, yeah.
But yeah, like, the trailer for this, I know people love the trailer for it because, you know, like, we do different movies, the podcast, whatever. Like, Julie watches some of them, doesn't watch some of them. Like, but the other day, after the new trailer for It came out, she, like, was texting me. She's like, "Oh, I want to see that. It looks scary." Mm-hmm. So the trailer is, you know, getting people's interest, at least. So we'll definitely be talking about that.
Was the text movie scary, William? And then question mark.
And then, like, a clown emoji.
I just hope it's really good, but really out there, so it doesn't spawn, like, okay, well, you know, we had our run of zombie films and our run of Paranormal Activity, and now a run of clown stuff. Like, I hope that doesn't.
Well, I think probably what this will more likely do is not do the run of clown stuff. But, like, this is get the Stranger Kid things and every single thing we can get them in until they grow up. So you'll probably see more buddy horror films if it's successful.
Well, like, if there were more of the Amblin style, like, group of kids, like, horror films, like, that wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing if they're good.
I mean,
yeah, but they're not going to be.
They're doing
not all of them.
Summer of '84. Have you been following any of that?
Yeah, I've read about it.
What is it? Is that the Turbo Kids people?
Yeah.
Turbo Kid directors. It basically looks like kind of a Stranger Things, Amblin. Obviously, Stranger Things is pulled from Amblin stuff that William's talking about, but it's already kind of like another one of those that is kicking off.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nostalgia-based stuff that's going on, but like I said, it comes out September 8th, so we'll be covering that for the podcast, of course, because it looks like it could be a huge hit, and it's a horror film that has a little bit of money behind it. So, because the studio had this pre-existing property and the new clowns, and even if people haven't watched the '90s series, they probably know about Pennywise, or at least are aware of Tim Curry's role. So,
wasn't this also like the most watched trailer on YouTube, like the first one they released, or something at some point had the most views of anything?
That might be it. That might be.
And so I feel like if that's continues into box office success, then because the previous one was the Fast 8, which that movie went on to make like 1 point something billion. I don't think this movie's going to break $1 billion, but I mean that does help it a lot. There's a lot of, and I've seen more word of mouth on this movie than a lot of other stuff. On Twitter, or Facebook, or Instagram, you see a lot of people posting stuff about it, which I think that bodes well, at least for the first weekend. So if it's at least just a decent movie, even if it's not a decent movie, I still think it'll make a lot of money, just because it'll be like Suicide Squad this year. Like, even if it's not a good movie and the word of mouth is terrible, it's still going to make money.
Well, looking at movies I think you could compare to it in terms of box office expectations. So the original Conjuring grossed $137 million in the U.S. And worldwide, it can easily double that amount. So I think that if it is in that range and makes like over $100 million in the U.S. and like $400 million worldwide or something, like that would be a big success, and hopefully let more studios see that they can venture into horror with budgets that aren't just microscopic, less than $5 million type projects. Not that those projects are bad. Like Get Out was made for under $5 million. That's one of our favorite movies of the year so far. But yeah, so it's something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on and talk about, because looks like it's going to be one of those kind of mainstream movies that crosses over beyond just the horror audience. Another trailer that came out recently. So like the last podcast we discussed, or was it that one or the one before?
Derek, are you like putting stuff in Tupperware jars right now?
No, my cat. My cat smacked something off of his shelf.
Cat.
What trailer are you talking about, William?
So there's a trailer for Leatherface, and like a few weeks ago we talked about the trailer for Jigsaw. So now there's a trailer for Leatherface, which is another prequel.
I wasn't on for the trailer of Jigsaw, so I was going to say that movie makes me want to. Have anybody seen Nacho Libre?
The Jack Black wrestling movie.
There's a scene where somebody gets a corn cob stabbed into their eye, and having watched the Jigsaw trailer, I want to do that to both of my eyes with corn cobs. Like
I didn't think it looked that terrible. I saw that first film, but it's like one of those movies where it's like, I don't care if they offer me like $1,000 to watch it, I will not watch it. I refuse. I'm so tired of those movies. Too bad it's our podcast movie.
Gosh, I don't think I can't do it. Like,
what if it gets excellent reviews?
It won't. There's no way.
I'm not going to bet against that, but you never know. I wasn't burnt out on those because I never got into them.
Yeah, so. That was like right when I was in like my high school phase, or when I was in high school. It was like the most popular horror movies, and it's like the same thing was like Kill Person A with terrible, like gore, super. And it's like I can't.
I don't like that either. But for some reason, does this seem like this is going to have a little bit of that? But also, like the trailer seemed pretty balanced as far as having stuff outside of those traps. Like it felt a little bit bigger. Granted, I've only seen like bits and pieces or the trailers from the other ones, but it almost seems like they're not leaning just on that. It seems like, okay, we're using this little element, but also we're telling like a bigger story.
I feel like every movie, I feel like, no, because a lot of the movies did that. I feel like these are the movies that are like, I don't know, like the idiot kid that you knew growing up that was like super deep, but he was just really stupid. Mm-hmm. Like that's these movies. They think that they're super deep and like, oh, blah, 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 and there's really nothing to it. It's like, oh, okay.
I don't know. They think they're super deep.
Some of them do. I mean, if you go back and watch it, they have like 20 twists and like, I don't know.
But so the Jigsaw trailer is out there. It's a franchise. It's a franchise that I don't know that anybody was really asking to come back, but it'll be back, and that'll be out. But the Leatherface trailer has Steven Dorff in it, and it's so the synopsis of it is: in Texas, years before the events of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the early days of the infamous Sawyer family, the youngest child is sentenced to a mental hospital after a suspicious incident leaves the sheriff's daughter dead. 10 years later, he kidnaps a young nurse and escapes with 3 other inmates. Pursued by authorities, including the deranged sheriff out to avenge his daughter's death, the young Sawyer teen goes on a violent road trip from hell, molding him into the monster known now as Leatherface. So once again, some of these prequels and things like that, like, do we really need to see how Leatherface became Leatherface? I thought it was pretty implied by some of the other movies that have already occurred, but I mean, if it's a decent flick, and it looks like it's going to deliver some gore and stuff, at least for people. But
is this from the directors of Inside and a couple other? Let's see here. Yeah, this trailer came out on the 17th, so it's I think it was before the last podcast, but I don't think we ever talked about it.
Yeah.
So they did Inside, ABCs of Death 2, one of the segments, Livid. Yeah, Inside I've heard good things from, and I've always wanted to see that. I just never did. I think that was one of the Dimension Extreme films. So, it's somebody that's done something at least that has some fanfare around it.
I think we've mentioned it before because it has Finn Jones in it, who is the Iron Fist from Marvel and was in Game of Thrones. And then I think the actor that plays young Leatherface was young Hodor in Game of Thrones. So there's all those connections.
That's funny.
But those movies, like we said before, like there's been multiple movies in the Texas Chainsaw like spin-off realm and prequels and stuff that have came out. There's like a few years ago, wasn't there like Texas Chainsaw 3D or something? Like,
yeah,
we haven't really followed those movies or just discussed them on the podcast, aside from like we did compare the original to the remake from like 2003, but not sure how that'll turn out, but we'll keep an eye on it. Also, the Suspiria remake is reportedly close to 3 hours long. It's currently has a runtime, according to Hollywood Elsewhere, their report that says it's 2 hours and 50 minutes long, which is
crazy,
pretty long. The original is on Amazon Prime now if you want to watch it, because it wasn't the easiest movie to find when we watched it the first time.
Oddly enough, too, the craft it kind of reminded me of the opening of Suspiria. Obviously not as effective, but just the fact that, they share similarities in the story a little bit, but then also like she's driving in the rain, looking out, and I think I don't know if it's supposed to be creepy, but I think they're playing more rock music and stuff. I didn't know if that was. I think they were playing rock music. I don't know if that was an intentional thing.
Yeah.
Well, the opening of The Craft, remember correctly, was a Beatles cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, so still haven't really seen any footage or anything from that Suspiria remake. So
yeah,
I mean,
this
hopefully
is from the director of I Am Love and A Bigger Splash, and those are like maybe they got Oscar talk. I don't know, but those are well reviewed films. So I'm very interested to see what, and from I don't think traditionally a horror film director, so I'm very interested to see that film because Suspiria is one of my favorites, and at least they're going big for it. And it's not, again, and no knock against it, but even though this is a remake, it doesn't feel like this is going to be, the Poltergeist remake or like another in this series, like a Saw or something. Like, okay, somebody's tackling this and kind of going big. Even if it's 3 hours long, it sounds like they weren't just putting in enough time and money to get a sequel made or a remake made. And they may cut it down. It may only end up being 2 hours because they do that all the time with films. Like, we haven't even seen footage from it yet. So it sounds like they probably don't have a final cut locked down or anything like that.
Yeah, because I feel like if you had a 3 hour long horror movie, you just lost your entire core audience that's going to make you most of your money. Because, like, you have a lot of, you target usually, like your teen, like late teens, early 20s type, and if you give it a 3 hour long movie, because that's obviously who like Saul was going to bank on, is going to be on like late teens, early 20s and stuff like that.
Are they banking on that audience? You know what I mean? Like this, he hasn't made films for that audience before at all. Like, is this for an and I'm not trying to like say younger people don't watch this stuff, but like, is this for like an older audience that's more into independent films, or like, you know what I mean? Like every time I feel like I go to a film, like I went to see Moonlight here locally, and the entire crowd was mostly like people over 50 years old. You know what I mean? Like, is this going to be targeted towards that? I don't think he's going to go. I don't think this trailer is going to be cut like the Leatherface trailer or the Saw trailer.
No. But at the end of the day, the only thing studios care about is money. And if you make a movie that's 3 hours long, it kills your chances of money.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, that's the only thing American studios care about.
Yeah.
I don't know what the production is. This is a Spanish director. Suspiria was an Italian film, so I don't know if these are some Italian producers.
Can we just get the guy that directed Troll 2 to do this instead?
No, get Tommy Wiseau to do Suspiria.
Yeah. I know the American teenagers like.
Yeah, so country, Italy. So I think it may be shot in Italy. It's English language. So who knows, you know. But I'm very interested that it has a long runtime just based on the fact that it sounds like they were going really big with this. You know, The Shining has a long runtime, and that film is obviously one of the greatest horror films of all time.
Yeah. And we'll just have to wait because I think, too, it's an Amazon production, so they're going to self-release it. So I have to see how that goes. But that means it should likely end up on Amazon Prime at some point.
Yeah, well, there you go. Amazon will do a limited release in theaters, and that isn't the end of the, you know what I mean? Like it's a investment for them, like Netflix. So they're able to probably throw more money in it than a traditional production would be able to.
Let's see. So some other brief news before we move into what we've been watching. The AMC is working on a history of horror TV series that will involve Eli Roth, where he is because apparently he's been interviewed in different documentaries about the horror genre. He's going to be the one. So the tentative title for the show is AMC Visionaries: Eli Roth's History of Horror, which is a 6-part series that looks at the history of the genre. And like one thing I think that is thrown around way too often is the word visionary when it comes to directors. Because I saw some article, and I forgot which outlet it was, something like how they overuse the word visionary for directors. Like there's been over 25 movies in the past few years that in the trailer referred to their director as visionary, and some of them are very not visionary. I think that's a term that gets thrown around. So I don't think that Eli Roth is a visionary director.
Absolutely not.
I mean,
here's the thing I don't get about this. This dude's had 2 good horror movies. All right. 2 good horror movies. That's it. You might say 3 if you want to throw in the cannibalistic movie he made, whatever it was called, The Green Room or Inferno or whatever.
No, you're not going to throw that one in. Now.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but some people might. But I'm saying is like, that's like having somebody who's very mediocre at their craft coming in and be like, oh, okay, you're pretty subpart what you do. Let's have you be the insult factor guy like on our show talking about that. It's
here's the difference with him though. He's a huge horror nerd, and he's done a lot of like, I get that, interview series and stuff. Like I watched a lot of stuff on him. Like Corey loves him basically because of his knowledge and kind of the stuff he has a fandom of. I think at the very least, like even if somebody's a documentary filmmaker, if it doesn't mean if they're making a documentary on artists, it doesn't mean that they may not be a great artist or painter.
No.
They may be good at kind of their knowledge and breadth of knowing that stuff. So that's my one thing is like it could turn out to be like
it could be
my favorite thing he's ever produced, but also some of the stuff he's into. I think he has a wide range, but like one of his favorite movies of all time is like Pieces, which is it's a schlocky slasher film. So, his stuff doesn't always match up with mine. I wonder if he's going to go in that route of like video nasties and kind of more of the stuff from the 80s and 70s, or is he going to go the full breadth of horror and start early on and touch on every aspect? I definitely think he'll have like one of those episodes will be the schlocky video nasty.
Man, I understand like he does have a depth of knowledge of the horror genre, but to me it's like the way that I've seen stuff for that as well too, and they're kind of, to me, the stuff I've got from him is like they're marketing it as because he's just such a great horror director. It's like,
I mean, he's a name. You know what I mean? He's a name. It'd be like Rob Zombie doing it, like.
But I could get Rob Zombie doing it a little bit more, and my thought. Everybody who listens to podcasts know my feelings are Rob Zombie, but at least like he's just so entrenched in the genre. I mean, he's Rob Zombie. You know what I'm saying? Like his entire shtick was like just horror stuff always. So to me, it would make a little more sense. And I probably would rather listen to him because I find him more of an interesting human.
Yeah, I like Rob Zombie a lot. Listen to him talk, but he's I don't know. I'm interested in seeing what this is though. It's cool that AMC's putting it together. You say it's a 6-part series, William?
That's what it says. They're saying it'll be part of a 6-part series, and then they also have in the works series on. So the other one's AMC Visionaries James Cameron's story of science fiction. Now, James Cameron is a visionary director, and the fact that he's directed the top 2 grossing films of all time kind of speaks to that, in addition to Aliens and Terminator 2 and all kinds of other stuff. And then they're also working on Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics, which I assume just because they have a tie-in to him through The Walking Dead, so it's easier to work with him or promote other properties they already have.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see what comes of that. I mean, having more stuff about the history of horror isn't bad. It's just maybe Eli Roth being the one to do it could put some people off immediately just because they don't like his movies, regardless of what his knowledge of the genre is.
Yeah.
But
because my thing is, if you're marketing something toward me, like I love sports. So if you're going to market like thing, it's like the history of football, and you find one player had 2 decent seasons and played for it's like, man, I don't care about that. Give me a John Carpenter or somebody somewhere interesting.
John Carpenter played football.
No, I'm saying give me a somebody else, somebody just a little bit that I find to me personally that like, okay, this fits what I want to hear. Even getting M. Night Shyamalan or something to do it. Because, he's had way more hits than Eli Roth,
What's funny is, like, in the horror community, though, if it was M. Night Shyamalan who was doing it, people would probably still have a problem with that just because they're like, he's more of a thriller director and he sucks.
Yeah, but it's like he's made more money and he's made more movies. So, it is what, everybody has their own take on it, but it's like I would much rather probably hear because I find him to be more interesting.
Well, I think John Carpenter probably wouldn't want to do it because he seems to kind of be moody.
Hey, but if they gave him a good enough check, he'd do it.
Yeah, that's not untrue. Well, since Steven Spielberg's the one who directed Poltergeist, maybe he could do it since he's directed one of the. Because Jaws, when Jaws came out, it was considered horror.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I'm saying and I understand. It's one of those things where it's like I feel like I don't know what it is about Eli Roth. I'm not going to hate on him because he has one decent movie, but it's like
it went from 2 to 1.
Yeah, because I don't really care for Hostel either. But it's like I get it. He's kind of like the Dane Cook of horror. Like Dane Cook was like really popular, but never really did anything. Well, and that's kind of like Eli Roth.
Eli Roth, I mean,
Dane Cook.
He was good in Inglourious Bastards, which was him acting, not directing or anything. And,
I really liked him in that.
But he also had very little dialogue.
Which is probably in a Tarantino film, so we know why that happened.
But so I think too, for what it's worth, I think that the Eli Roth and Rob Zombie, and we're not clear of responsibility on this, get too much talk in the horror sphere compared to the amount of work they do and the amount of influence they have, just because they're 2 names that were mainstream at some point.
Well, I'm going to kind of throw Rob Zombie in the Elvira range of stuff. And the reason I say that is because his image is horror. That's what his music was sold on. That's what for the better part of my life, that's what he's been, because he's been performing since I've been alive. So, and from Rob Zombie, from the time you knew who he was till now, he's always been in that horror genre, right? Yeah. And part of this, kind of like Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper makes sense in some of that because of the way he sold himself. But that's where Eli Roth, you get a little bit lost. I can understand Forrest and Rob Zombie a little bit more of that just because the image he's sold in his career, which is spanned a lot longer.
I would like to have almost a mixture of like Joe Dante and John Landis, all the people they have involved in Trailers from Hell. I think it would be cool to have those guys produce okay, let's get together a series of you know what I mean, people to talk about this stuff and do it in that way. I would almost just want somebody a little bit older, James Cameron was a perfect choice, not only because his hits, because, he was doing this in the 80s, early 80s. He was started out of the gate. So Eli Roth, he came in like the late 90s or 2000. So
Yeah.
he still feels relatively young in the pantheon of horror. So it would have been nice to have somebody that not only maybe has a great knowledge, but also lived through some of that stuff. And that's when you would get a lot more interesting stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm sure he's talked to a million people and got a lot of great firsthand stories and information. You know what I mean? Just working in the industry, being around on sets and working with people in various regards. So,
but
I'm sure
somebody
he'll
that
bring a lot to it.
But just real quick to your point, John Landis would probably been a terribly interesting person to have on the show just because of his career arc, and all the stuff he's done.
Yeah.
So there's just different people I look at and it's like, I would probably rather hear from other people, but it's whatever. I mean, I'll probably check an episode out or something just to see how I feel about it. I might watch it and really like it. And I might watch it like, that's what I thought that was.
I hope it's really well produced. Like the CNN, they have that series. It was like seasons, and they do like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and it's a whole season, and like every episode tackles like a different aspect of that decade, and it is like awesome and phenomenal. Like I would like to see it kind of, even if it was like as a third of as good as that, like then I would be happy with it because just take it seriously and not just, you know what I mean, not be like a quickly produced thing. But and it's going to be what it's going to be.
Hopefully the show could be much more boring than the AMC show that was about Norman Reedus riding motorcycles. So, just other very brief news. Volumes of Blood Horror Stories you can pre-order and it'll be on DVD and Blu-ray this week. I believe it releases on August 1st.
So when this goes up.
So you can pick that up if you want to watch it and see the segment that Sean directed and see others who've been on the podcast. So Nathan Thomas Milner has 2 segments in it that he directed and wrote, so you can see those. Julie's in one of them. Shelby Taylor Mullins, who's been in some of our shorts, is in a couple of segments in there. One of them that Sean did. So you can check that out and see some people that we've worked with before or talked about.
It's a 2-hour horror movie.
So
it's only a little bit shy of, 50 minutes shy of Suspiria.
Yeah. So it's an episode of The Walking Dead short of.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that wraps up all the news. So for what we've been watching, as far as I'm concerned, I've only really had time to watch TV stuff. So like Twin Peaks, Game of Thrones. I've been watching those. You can check out the Twin Peaks videos we've been doing. That show is so on Sunday nights, like if I'm out and don't get home in time and I have to decide what do I want to watch first, Twin Peaks or Game of Thrones, I watch Twin Peaks first. So that should tell you something.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm still interested in Game of Thrones and, there's only 2 seasons left and this is the second to last season. So I'm super excited for it, but
some plot turns and maybe character deaths or something may happen in Game of Thrones, but you kind of know the course of generally it's a fantasy show and some fantasy stuff's going to happen. Twin Peaks, you don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? We kind of know, but still you could be blown away as far as your expectations on a week by week basis. I don't know if it was Twin Peaks Archive or somebody on Twitter. They said something like, okay, this Sunday's episode we're hearing is can't miss or something like that. Obviously every episode has been can't miss. And by the time this goes up, that episode will already aired, but every week, I'm just so excited on Sundays for that show. And I like Game of Thrones too, but I'll watch that normally on a Monday night. And also too, they're I guess moving the time up for Twin Peaks because of maybe Ray Donovan, possibly Twin Peaks. I don't know when that starts though, but I think it's supposed to start an hour early now. Did you know about that?
No, I always watch it on the streaming app. I don't ever watch it live anyway.
Yeah. So it should go up an hour earlier, but I don't know. I just saw a tweet about that during Comic-Con. Somebody was acting like it was announced then, but I hadn't heard anything else on it, and I haven't checked about it. But yeah, that show's my favorite thing ever.
Yep. So that's all I watched. So anybody else watch anything?
I mean, I didn't get to watch anything horror related. I watched it's called The Place Between the Pines. And it's got The Place Between the Pines, and has Ryan Gosling in it and Bradley Cooper. And it's kind of released around the same time as Drive, I think, with a year of that or so. It was one of those movies I thought was going to be way more interesting than it was. It was probably about a little over 2 hours, and I don't know. I mean, have any of y'all watched it?
No,
No.
Nicole watched it. I wanted to, and then I heard it was just okay. And Nicole watched it, and she was like, "Yeah, it's fine. You'll probably like it a little bit," but so I just never got around to it.
Yeah, like the way it kind of worked is like the first part of it, because the movie is in 3 sections, like most movies, but this one's definitely like legit. I don't want to give me spoilers.
It's like
but
chapters almost, or like
yeah, it's more like chapters, and the first part was interesting, and then like the second and third parts, I just could care less for, so. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of hoping to be, because it kind of felt a little bit like Drive at the beginning, the way that they shot it and stuff. And then, Ryan Gosling's good in everything he does pretty much. But then his kind of got pretty boring. Just way too long of a movie with, I don't know. You almost have to watch it. It's got pretty boring.
Yeah, it looked awesome. The trailer looked awesome and everything.
Yeah.
I was kind of excited for it. Then I just heard it. It's okay. And I just never got around to it.
Yeah, if you like heist stuff, then the first third of the movie is pretty awesome. Then once it gets out of that, it's pretty boring.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yep. So was that it, Derek?
Yeah, that's all I got.
What did I watch? I watched Twin Peaks. I watched an episode of Glow. Thought it was okay, but I haven't watched any more of it. I was watching some comedy this week because I was just kind of in the mood. I don't know why. I finally watched Masterminds because I was excited for that film, and I heard it wasn't that great, and I, was like, all right, I can see how this could be really bad, but actually I laughed quite a bit at that. Zach Galifianakis, Kristen Wiig, so I was like, well, it's got a good cast, even if I got a few laughs out of it. It was pretty, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I just watched it because it was on HBO. I watched another Zach Galifianakis movie, and I can't remember what it was. What's another recent one of his? Let's see. Keeping with the Joneses.
Oh,
that was okay.
The one with Don Draper and Wonder Woman in it.
Yeah, and Isla Fisher, which I like all of them. And so, it had some fine moments. It was okay. Basically, I was just trying to turn on some stuff to just laugh and not have to pay too much attention to. And then I did go to see Valerian, because I like Luc Besson a whole lot, and I was wanting to see it last weekend, but we were out of town. And I saw Dunkirk when we got back. So I'm kind of backed up because now Atomic Blonde, I really want to see that also. But I'm like, Valerian may be out of theaters very soon. So I need to see that because it's only made 20-something million.
Yeah, it did not do very good.
And it is on a budget of 180. But so Atomic Blonde, I may see that tonight if I have any time at all. But Valerian, the way they produced that, I guess, was an independent film where instead of getting one, it wasn't studio controlled. It wasn't one studio or a couple studios risking $180 million. They apparently, they've got a bunch of different investors like you would with an indie film. So nobody took a huge risk on it. So, something like this, sometimes you get put in director jail. I'm not saying this won't maybe hurt him as far as getting bigger projects like this financed, but it's not a huge blow to any one person, which is good. I was interested in it because, he does crazy stuff, and I liked The Fifth Element, just how wild that is. And this is based on a graphic novel, I think. But yeah, this is kind of my complaint walking out of Star Wars, The Force Awakens, was all right, I feel like I just saw some of the just same stuff I've seen in other films. And they want to keep it familiar, I get that. But a sci-fi film, that's kind of the fun part of it, is just, showing you something new. And they've kind of got that world settled and built, and the realities of a lot of the just the world of Star Wars. And so that film feels like a fantasy film where it's okay, this planet's sand, this planet's this, and this is just what it is, and we have the Force and then some technology around it. But Valerian, there were so many creative environments and cities and stuff, and it just went from one to another, and not only just the environments, there was just some trippy just sequences. There's, not to spoil too much, but not a lot of people are going to see this film, obviously, but one of the first elements was they basically, the two main characters are Cara, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Delevingne and Dane DeHaan, the guy from what film was that we saw this year, William?
Cure for Wellness. He was also in Amazing Spider-Man. Cara Delevingne was the Enchantress and Moon June or June Moon or whatever the hell her name was
Yeah.
on Suicide Squad.
They're basically like work for the military or whatever. So they have to go in some place and retrieve something. But it isn't just like, it's like, kind of looks like a sand planet, but basically you have to, and they have tourists there. And it's always like this weird, like Luc Besson, like humor mixed in throughout. And it's not like super strong humor, but you know, they're showing these tourists going in to kind of give you an idea of like how this reality works. So you look at everybody in this area and they're all just standing on a desert flat land. But as people go in, they put on these glasses and they're like, it's like to enter this dimension, you have to be wearing these glasses and all this stuff. And basically it's almost like VR. Like they put it on and then everything around them is totally changed. And not only is it just a flat ground anymore, but it's also like levels to a city. And it's like the Fifth Element city, you know what I mean? Where it's like skyrise and all that, but it just looks totally awesome. So there's like an awesome action sequence that takes place in there where one of the characters, you know, he has the glasses on and he's kind of trapped in that reality right now, but the other girl is trying to help him as he's running around, but he's stuck because his arm's like stuck in this thing or whatever. And it's just like really creative stuff like that. And that's just like one of the sequences. And there's some other cool things like that. I think the big thing that probably hurt the film for a lot of people was just the two leads. You know what I mean? Like they didn't get people in the seats, for one. And two, you know, there wasn't a lot of good humor in the trailer, and not to say there's a lot of great humor in this film at all. So it probably just felt like I don't know. Did it to you guys? I mean, did it look like maybe an out of touch, just big budget sci-fi film that kind of didn't have much personality? Like I almost feel like that was the takeaway.
Watching the trailer, I just thought this looks like it'll be pretty, but be very dumb and make no sense.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense. Maybe it wasn't like the plot wasn't like super crazy or interesting. It was. I did like it. I did like the plot as far as the setup and all that stuff, and you know, some of the dialogue is just fine. A lot of it's not great. But for me, it's almost like just the more of an experience on the whole. You know, like some films are more about aesthetic and all this stuff. And there was just a lot of good sequences I liked in it. Like Rihanna, I actually loved her character in it. And again, her character is just not like a person. Like it's something super creative. It's something we've kind of seen before, but a different twist. Ethan Hawke shows up for a little bit, like Clive Owen's in it. So yeah, I super enjoyed it. Like I really like that film, and it's one that like when I do get a 4K player and TV, like I definitely want to watch this again in 4K because it was just awesome and super creative, and there was like a fun music moment, a couple musical moments in it that were pretty fun and stuff. So yeah, I think, and I also like Cara Delevingne. Like after seeing her in this, I like her a lot now actually. And Dane DeHaan, I think he was a bit miscast, but he's totally fine. But yeah, if they would have had two different leads, I think this would have done a lot better. And maybe a little bit, I don't know, maybe another pass on the script. But Luc Besson, he had full control. Like he wrote and directed it. And, you know, basically what I was reading is he got no studio notes because no studios was involved. So on a normal film of this budget and this caliber, they may have not been the leads. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting film from that aspect too, just to see what somebody does with $180 million that can do whatever they want. And it feels like every dollar is on screen, like because there's like such a breadth of worlds, and they had to like build everyone from scratch, obviously. Like, you know, I know there's reference source material from the graphic novels, but they're so crazy, you know, a lot of it is just CGI and creating like the rules of each world and all this stuff. But after I saw this, I'm like, how much did they spend like on that last Star Trek film? Like, I feels like that last Star Trek film felt very visually boring compared to this. Like they're on one planet basically the whole time. And it's like, okay, did they, honestly, in my mind, I was thinking, did they spend like maybe 60 or 80 million on that? Which I know that's not possible, but that's how it felt. But they had the same exact budget. So like, even though this was a lot of money and it bombed domestically, like he stretched every dollar of that $180 million. And I just like seeing films like that sometimes, like them taking that money and just running with it. So I don't know what the international distribution plans are, but it's not out yet. So I hope it makes more money back. But yeah, I mean, I can't say it's a seller film and it's up everybody's alley, but if you're into seeing spectacle and you like Luc Besson and just want to see some cool, like, original ideas, then definitely check it out. But and on the big screen too. But there's so many things out right now. You know, I would say probably see Spider-Man because it will appeal to a wider audience than this. So
Spider-Man.
you'd be taking more of a chance seeing this if you weren't for sure if it was up your alley. But yeah, I hope it finds an audience. You know, obviously it probably won't in theaters domestically, but and yeah, that was probably it that I can think of.
All right, so now I can move into our discussion of The Craft, the 1996 witch kind of teen horror, not really horror. I mean, let's see. So IMDb listed as a drama fantasy horror film. And the plot synopsis is a newcomer to a Catholic prep high school falls in with a trio of outcast teenage girls who practice witchcraft, and they all soon conjure up various spells and curses against those who even slightly anger them. And this came out in 96 and was, you know, pretty decent financial success and has gone on to be a kind of cult success, growing in popularity over the years. And it's something that there's been discussion about being remade in recent years. I know you talked about that before at some point.
Oh, no, I think it's The Craft 2.
Yeah, it's supposed to have a sequel.
Oh,
I just Googled
rebooted.
This. 20 years after takes place 20 years after the original movie, but then that was from 2016, and then 2017 Horror Freak said Craft sequel is MIA, no project updates in over a year.
So yeah, so it was more of a reboot of the property, and like this is a movie that I remember being on TV a ton. Maybe it's like TNT or one of those channels showing it a lot. And I remember seeing it a lot in that era.
The way I watched it first was Fox premiered it. You know, it's like new to TV or whatever. I guess they had the rights for that, and I was excited for it. Like I remember, I don't know if I recorded it or not, but you know, I remember seeing the trailers, like, oh, this looks awesome. And I remember like getting ready at like 9:00 and watching this film, and I loved it. You know, it was 96, so I was 11, I guess, whenever it hit TV. But yeah, I really loved that film as a kid, so I've always kind of had a soft spot for it.
Well, and two, like, so the movie's rated R, but I don't think a lot really had to be cut to make it PG-13.
No.
Because there wasn't a ton of language, and the sexual stuff that was in there was pretty minor, really. Once again,
This movie is rated R.
Yeah.
There's nothing in this movie that made me think there's no way they get rated or R-rated.
Do you think
now.
it's the witchcraft stuff because, you know what I mean, just people
it's
stigma
maybe
about it?
the only thing, but
Yeah.
like when you go and watch this film, like there's nothing in there that's rated R, you know.
So the rating says it's rated R for some terror and violence and for brief language. And if you go through the list of things in the movie, sex and nudity, a teenage boy attempts to rape a teenage girl, a teenage boy and teenage girl make out in a bed. A man is run over by a vehicle. A group of sharks beach themselves and their rotting corpses are shown. So there's like all stuff that really would probably like there. I think there is like
and
an
somebody
F-bomb.
said, so I'm looking at this a little bit, but it's like her slitting her wrist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's one that I think for sure, because you don't want any like younger kids, you know, copycat stuff. As far as that goes, for sure.
Yeah, but as a whole, the content in it, like when you watch it now, if you didn't realize, like Derek said, like if you didn't know it was rated R, you'd be like, oh, it's PG-13.
This
Yeah, I
is
thought it was PG-13.
5+ F words.
Oh, see, it didn't really stick out to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it didn't either to me. I'm on this website, kidsinmind.com, and it's a profanity. Got a 6 out of 10, 5+ F words.
But yeah, so I guess too we should go with the cast list because like I said, there's the interesting aspect of Nev Campbell's in it, Skeet Ulrich, but the lead character is Robin Tunney, and then you have Fariza Balk, who is in a bunch of stuff, Rachel True, Christine Taylor, who if that name sounds familiar, she's Ben Stiller's wife, who's in like Dodgeball, and then ex-wife. Sorry, Ben Stiller.
Oh, and the Brady Bunch is what I think.
Oh, the Brady Bunch movie.
Yeah.
So I just imagine her being Marsha Brady, especially when she's like a little racist. I'm like, oh man, there can be like a good cut between both those films using some scenes in this.
Yeah, and she's also in Zoolander and a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, so it's funny watching this movie because it was very much like, because some of these 90s movies feel very planted in the era. And this is one that feels like it took place in the 90s as it was shot and written in the 90s and had actresses who were big in the 90s. So it all makes sense and it feels like that. But like when you're talking about or rebooting this property, like I'm not sure exactly what you would do in a reboot. Like, to me, it didn't really. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of movies where they don't really lend themselves to sequels, but they make a ton of like direct-to-video BS just because there's a name attached that people might theoretically buy or care about. But like, as far as like the movie itself, the story is pretty straightforward. Some high school girls learn to use witchcraft and then use it for purposes good and bad. Like Nev Campbell's character has severe burns on her back and she uses it to cure that. It's like, well, that's not really a bad thing. But the character Rochelle uses it to make Christine Taylor's character lose her hair and go bald because she's racist and mean to her.
Or because she brushed it too many times.
Yeah. And then like Fairuza Balk, her character Nancy, kills her. I forgot what the relationship, like her dad or stepdad, or her mom's boyfriend or whatever kind of abusive redneck trash dude dies as a result of the magic, and then they get his life insurance policy and get to move to a nice apartment where they still put the mattresses on the floor and don't have an actual bed frame.
I think it's because they just moved in. Because I was thinking, how much time has passed? You think about the time they had to wait to get the money after the funeral and to buy that place. I'm like, okay, this is like they're trying to compact that time. I was thinking about that too for some weird reason.
I think too, though,
very empty.
They could also, like, even though like I've never had my mattress and stuff on the floor, but I think that could just be like if you're living in a trailer or whatever, that maybe you don't have you don't have a bed frame. I don't know. I don't want to stereotype based on trailers or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I think that is more of like a character thing. Like, even though they moved to this nice big apartment, they're still living the exact same way and dressing trashy rich, which I think is an appropriate term for the way like her mom was dressed in it.
Yeah.
But, so the overall arc of the movie, they learn magic, and then the main character Sarah uses it to make Skeet Ulrich's character Chris fall in love with her.
Oh, real quick though, about the trashy rich part, they only received $175,000.
Yeah.
So looking at the amount of money, and she had looked like a brand new Mustang GT convertible in it, and the apartment they lived in, I would say that they probably went through that money in a week.
Well, I don't remember exactly what those cars cost that period of time. I think like a Mustang GT convertible would have been like $25,000 or something in that range.
So that's a decent amount of that money.
And then
it could have been a condo. They could have paid $130 for the condo.
Or they could, or maybe it was 100. I don't remember what home values were in the 90s. I was.
Are they in California?
10 or 11.
No, they're in like. I thought they were in like.
I thought they were in California, in LA, because they lived in San Francisco before when she tried to kill herself. The Sarah character.
So that apartment in LA would be.
Maybe they just.
It was the mid 90s.
They put a good. They probably just made a good down deposit and owe money on it. I mean, we don't really need to parse out, but like it is funny that at that point in time that like $175,000 sound like a lot of money, and then today's world you're like, huh. You could buy like,
and too, like, I think that was kind of a little bit the point. Like, okay, they got money, but they're not like millionaires. You know what I mean?
They got more money than they had, but they didn't get enough money. They're set for life.
Yes,
and not with the way they said. It was just funny to me that like they got that $175,000 and they probably immediately went through it. Like, you should buy a jukebox and that. I don't know. I just found that to be a little funny.
But so the overall, movie, like. The horror elements are in there a little bit, but the witchcraft stuff, apparently when they were making this movie, they actually had like a Wiccan who is on set and involved with it to try to make sure it was somewhat accurate and did things that were realistic. And like it's not like a kitschy like hocus pocus type of witchcraft used in the movie.
Are we talking about hocus pocus?
Like they're not using kind of a ride around on broomsticks and have hats and stuff. Like there is some flying at some point, but it doesn't really go into the kitschy territory of that. It just has more, I guess, real world type witchcraft.
Well, it was what honestly like was maybe it was bigger before this too, but was kind of big in the 90s. Like I love that the story is, oh yeah, those girls are witches in the school. Because I remember people talking about girls at PRP where we went being witches. You know, like there was one girl like, oh yeah, she's a witch. She like, and literally like talking about her putting curses on people and stuff. And I had a friend, a bunch of his, he was Wiccan, but he like practiced with a bunch of his friends. He was a little bit older than I was, and I don't know if this is the same thing, but literally like sometimes we'd be skating and he'd be hanging out and it would start to rain and we'd be like, hey Robbie, do a rain dance, and he would like do like this rain dance or something, and it actually worked like twice.
Or was he just watching the Doppler radar?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, well, we were out, it was like the night, early 2000s, so no cell phones though, so we had no clue of the weather pattern, but like the 2 times he did it with us, it did stop. But I remember like hearing a lot about Wiccans and all that stuff, and maybe this film caused a boom in that as well.
Well, I don't know.
I heard a lot about it.
Well, you think about like in the 90s, I'm just trying to think of stuff that's popular with witches, and the stuff that comes to mind is like The Craft, Hocus Pocus, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Well, so, then like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which had
Buffy
like subplots with that, and I mean, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer does feel like it could almost be a companion piece, like the TV series to this movie. And two, like one thing this movie did was, the slasher movies, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream and all those followed a little bit more in the traditional slasher movie mold. Mm-hmm. And The Craft had, the female leads and had things more from their perspective. So like the Skeet Ulrich character, Chris, was portrayed like there wasn't a lot of backstory given. Like, it was implied that something happened between him and the Nancy character, but then like after the love spell was put on him, he tried to rape the main character Sarah.
Yeah,
but that's like, was that his personality, or is it just because he had the spell on him that made him act in ways that weren't what he would normally do? Like it wasn't super easy getting a read on if he was like a terrible, because he did like spread rumors they had sex and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I think it was that it was the thing, because it was the curse or whatever, just because the spell, just because she did say it's going to come back to you threefold. So that's like the worst thing that could have come back to her that is related to him falling for her.
Yeah, and hearing dog noises, but the witchcraft side of it, like
Derek, you may mute your mic for a second once you're talking.
I lost my train of thought, but yeah,
the witchcraft stuff.
Yeah, like the when they start using the witchcraft, then it gets interesting, and what they use it for, and like they go to that one bookstore and stuff like that. Like they do all kinds of like. There's CG.
There's a cool lore and universe to it all that is also grounded in what some people practice in real life, and that was like a cool angle to the whole thing.
I wish they'd just done this more like the way that was when we were in high school, or just people just did really lame, like you're talking about people at school are like witches, but you had like the ones that were just like do really weird, lame stuff and nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Like it would just be funny if it was more like that, where like it just was purely coincidence.
That's The Craft too. It's like the Brady Bunch movie where the teenage characters are stuck in the 90s doing witch stuff that doesn't actually work.
Yeah, like it just like you said, like your friend that did the ring dance, like they do stuff and just coincidentally it happens, and then it just escalates, and I don't know.
But like I feel like there's a lot of kids that probably watched this movie in the late 90s, listened to Tool and Korn while wearing jean coats and black t-shirts.
I did all of those things in the late 90s in middle school.
Like, it just evokes a very specific feel.
Yes.
But
and that's what I love about it, too. Like, it's a very much time and place type of movie.
Yeah, but, one thing, though, after watching this movie, like, it wasn't boring. Like, at no point it was, I didn't check my phone, but once, that was just because I was checking it for the podcast. But, like, I wasn't checking my phone. I wasn't looking at the clock. I do feel like even though it is extremely 90s, it's not as 90s as like some of the Scream movies were because they use like Creed music and stuff.
Oh,
but like it still
Scream
had
3.
it still had some very generic 90s music. But outside of like the music, like I feel like if you took this exact movie and placed it in this era, like it still works. You know?
Yeah, I really like this movie still. Yeah.
And
There's not much modification you would need to do because I feel like because of the elements that they tackled on it are still very relevant today. Like each character, their issues are relatable.
Yes,
you know, you have like a girl, the main character who is dealing with her mother's death and the fall from that and try to commit suicide. That's still relatable. We have a character that is, you know, a different ethnicity than everybody in the entire school. So she gets picked on and that is still relatable today.
Thankfully, that's not an issue anymore. You know?
But it's like everything in the movie, and you have a girl that has like some scarification. All of it works. There's nothing that's like, oh, that was only a 90s issue. Like, no, it all still works really well, and people would probably still watch the movie and get what they need to get out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
One too, like the witchcraft when it actually happens, like the CG that's used for some of it doesn't look that bad. Like rewatching this, you know, it's on Netflix is how we all watched, I believe. And watching it on like a modern like 4K TV and all that stuff.
I ran it from Blockbuster.
You mean Hollywood Video?
Yeah, sorry, Hollywood Video. Planet Hollywood.
And then did you get a bag of those Cheetos that are like in the checkerboard shape and the Chester Cheetah Paul shape? And
no, I got some Doritos 3D with Godzilla, Matthew Broderick's Godzilla on it.
See,
and then I had a new Coke that I drank, a new Pepsi, whatever it was, the
Crystal
clear
Pepsi.
Yeah,
which just came back recently. But thinking about this now, like I really want some of those Cheetos. They're like the Chester Cheetah Paul shape because those were good. I'm sure they're terrible for you and probably just about you're eating like cardboard with cheese flavor on it. But
hey, William used to harm the old 3D Doritos. So if he ever tries to deny it, he cannot. The ones that came like a little plastic tube, you know what I'm talking about, Sean?
Yeah, I like those. Yeah.
Everybody liked them, but I remember William ate them a lot.
Well, I mean, we all eat stuff, but like the CG effects.
That needs to be the image for the podcast. Just I found a 3D Dorito of somebody pouring it out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we need to just get the Matthew Broderick commercial where he's like eating them because that's what they got made for is the Godzilla movie.
Another relic of the 90s.
Do you guys remember? I think it was Pizza Hut chips.
Yes, they were. I thought they had Doritos flavored Pizza Hut stuff. I don't
know. There was some pizzerias I'm finding, and then some Pizza Hut pizza chips. I just remember probably 1990. I remember them coming out with that or me eating it and loving it, like because I loved pizza at the time, and I still do. But I remember my mind being blown by that, and I don't think we're anymore.
But 90s pizza was just better than 2017.
Why isn't there one movie that's just focused on all 90s food products? Like it was made in the 90s, and it's just every product placement from every food item that is no longer around.
See,
I love that movie.
I want to get enough budget to make a movie where you can get like a prop master and people to make stuff and have them custom make all those different chips and stuff again that don't exist so I can just eat them.
Well, I know we're like on a 90s thing, but, the only thing I'm disappointed with this movie is they didn't drink any Snapple because I feel like that was like a thing that's only popular in the 90s, and they didn't do that. So this movie might not be from the 90s.
I used to walk up to the convenience store by our house and get Snapple, and about every day when I was like, before I could drive or anything. And I built a huge pyramid in my room of Snapple on my entertainment system. And then I had to move it to the floor because it was so big and it would constantly just get knocked over and just glass would go everywhere. And like, by the time I was going to throw them out, all of them had like mold on the bottom because there was just a little bit of juice left, and they had all molded up. I love some Snapple, man.
Yeah, it's like you see it. I still see it in stores, but it's like to me, it's like it's this 1990.
No, you know what it was? It wasn't Snapple. It was Whipper Snapple. You remember that?
No,
that was because I didn't like Snapple that much. It was Whipple Snapple or something like that. It was like their offshoot thing, and it was like a fruit juice. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't like Snapple, but I like Whipple Snapple. Yeah, that's what I got. And
Whipple Snapple.
Yeah.
But back to the movie, the CG in the movie actually holds up pretty well for a lot of the effects, like fingers turning into snakes and
mostly practical, wasn't it?
Well, it seems like if they did anything, they're using effects to merge together practical things that happened. which I think always looks better than using like if it was a fake CGI snake like on the fingers when they turn into snakes and stuff, that would just look terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, like when they change like the hair color, or like when the Nancy character looks like Sarah and then like does like the transformation, like that stuff is, you know, moderate effects. Like there's not a lot being done there, and that in and of itself makes it hold up better because it's not like calling attention to itself ridiculously.
The one thing that looked very much like a TV CGI, like maybe mid 2000s TV CGI, was when she runs into the store near the end of the film, and the you know, where it has a pentagram on the floor in the back of the store.
Yeah.
And her and the bookstore owner look down, and like there's some swirling stuff on the floor. It looked totally fine, but it felt like mid 2000s TV CGI.
Well, yeah, I mean, because like,
they didn't lean into the CGI, thankfully. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's a lot of practical. So any CGI that pops up, it doesn't distract, because it's not like using CGI to really scare you or be like the horror elements of it. It is just kind of a supplement to storytelling, basically. And then there are real snakes and seemingly real bugs, even if they're fake bugs, they're practical or whatever.
yeah, because like the end scene stuff with all the bugs and snakes, and at one point there was like lizards. I'm like, well, the lizards aren't that scary, but
Lizards.
there was like all the snakes and like you know, cockroaches and all that stuff. Like that was making me kind of uncomfortable watching it. So
Yeah.
like that still looked like, that's why the practical stuff always holds up, because like that was a very effective sequence. Like that would probably be scary for kids to watch, like a little kid. That's,
yeah, if anything, creepy, and like, you know, it makes you squirm a little
because
bit.
then you imagine like if you were in that situation, I'd be like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, get me out of here, nope. Can I get like a full body suit that
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
that they train dogs in, like the big pads.
No, I want my face covered. I want like one of those hazmat suits where nothing get in. I mean, like there's huge ass like constrictors or snakes that can bite you though. Like that would suck.
Yeah.
But like all that stuff was effectively done, and you know, there was like romance element to it with like the Chris character, but like that really wasn't the focus of the movie. And I mean, it did play some into it, and he did get killed. So
Yeah, and it was kind of, I feel like it was more to kind of just lead into the story of the girls. You know what I mean? And each of their wants or whatever.
yeah, it was an ancillary character as part of the story of the women in the movie.
Yeah, so it wasn't just like, oh, I'm fawning over this guy. It was like, you know, which I like that it wasn't. They didn't hinge on a relationship, and he didn't like save her at the end, or you know what I mean. It wasn't something like that. Like they didn't end up together.
Well, and I like too that, like, you know, even though like Scream, which had Nev Campbell as the lead, and I Know What You Did Last Summer that had Jennifer Love Hewitt as the lead, and you know, The Faculty is a little bit more of like a ensemble, like where you could arguably say like Elijah Wood was the lead maybe in that movie, but like in this one, it was like the leads are all females or all women, and that just gave it a little bit different feel than a lot of those other movies. And, you know, it started out almost feeling kind of like a Heathers type film, more of like a dark comedy, but then it went a little bit more into the magic and the, you know, towards the end, like the horror element with all the snakes and everything. So that kind of set it apart, made it a different type of film. But I could see if somebody likes Heathers also liking The Craft or vice versa.
Yeah, 'cause they're pretty, you know, it's four women that kind of have a similar dynamic to it to a certain degree, you know.
It's a high school movie with a group of women. That it's not like a sex comedy thing.
Yeah,
like there's this dark element to it.
Yeah, and you know, one thing, and it also kind of has a similar start because Winona Ryder's character had people, one of the football players lied about what they did with her too, so you can make a connection there. But something I did like about this was like the clothing that the Nancy character wore, because like you can't get any more like 90s or like the red lips, all that stuff. Like it's really nice to go back and watch this, and because it feels more representative of what people probably actually dress like in the 90s. Because you see some movies and it's like I don't know, it's just like the ridiculous end of it, but it all feels pretty normal. You know, like I feel like people at a high school probably really dress like that because they're at a private high school or something.
Yeah.
You know,
speaking of Nancy, earlier when I was searching for The Craft 2, I found a video on YouTube that's The Craft 2, The Son of Nancy. And it's two teenagers. And I'm guessing this one is the son of Nancy because this guy has black eyeliner on. and he's wearing like a like a school uniform thing, just like a white polo or whatever. It's 5 minutes and 43 seconds, has 1,500 views almost, 3 thumbs up, 4 thumbs down. Somebody said, what the hell did I just watch? A low budget craft movie, too much swearing. And then somebody said, have you ever watched the movie? So I'm going to be watching this afterwards. Maybe we'll put that in the link to give them
Well,
a
I like that he had 3 thumbs up, but 4 down.
Hey, at least they tried.
Yeah, I mean, at least they tried. They got 300 views, so.
I didn't expect a craft fan film to be on YouTube, really. But hey, that's the power of the craft.
Is it craft with the C or K? Because there's probably a lot of K craft films on
It's
there.
with the C, and it's from 2015. These kids look like they're like 15 themselves. So,
well, it's kind of funny that
out before they were born.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of funny that they did that. It's like one movie came out 4 years probably before they were born.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a testament that it's a good movie because people who are
So wait a
younger.
minute, what is this fan film called?
The Craft 2, The Son of Nancy. Full video. Yeah.
We need to start making fan films of a bunch of things that nobody would actually think
to make a film of.
Like, so I just saw it and it looks like a little kid.
That's just some kids making a film. Yeah.
Hey,
like,
Mark.
Hi,
totally
Mark.
Cool.
I did not.
It's been a while since I've watched The Craft all the way through. Like I've seen parts of it on TV, but yeah, I really like this film. It's not, it's not a masterpiece, but it holds up because it is it's not another element to it that I think makes it stand out. It's not just a slasher film. It's a horror film in some ways, but it actually has a story, and it's an original story for this because, they're not just taking a subgenre of film and then putting new characters in there and basically kind of doing the same stuff and the same plot elements. Like it's a film worth watching because it is different than most other films from that era or even today, really. It's ones too, like my little cousins, like I was trying to think how much bad stuff is in this. Yeah, there's a little bit of sex stuff, but like it's one I think they would probably like quite a bit just because of the the darker elements of it. And it's not too dark. I mean, the suicide stuff is the darkest stuff in there, obviously.
But like if they're watching,
like the hair falling out and all that.
But like this, there's nothing worse in this movie than Twilight films.
Well, or two, like if people are watching, if teenagers or whatever are watching 13 Reasons Why, that Netflix series that deals with suicide and stuff, like this is actually much more tame than that.
Yeah.
Because even though there might be some similar ground tread, it's, not as much of it is shown. And, even like the scene in The Craft where there's like the attempted rape. Now, all that stuff is always disconcerting, upsetting to anybody to actually experience that. And unfortunately, far too many people do. But the show like 13 Reasons Why has like more of that type of stuff and shows more of it. And it seems more, not that it's explicit, because it's really not nudity. It's just, it's played out longer as opposed to this one. It's more of like one instance of a character coming after the, a male character coming after a female character. And then her like kicking him in the groin and ending it. And so it's still upsetting to see, I'm sure. But like, it's not
as far as that scene needed to go to get the point across.
Yes. If they had drugged that out for another 5 or 10 minutes, it would have been very unnecessary.
It's just the fight scene from They Live, but with that, they're just struggling, not getting anywhere for like 5 minutes.
But it is interesting seeing so in The Craft, spoiler for The Craft and Scream, you have
go watch The Craft.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. You can go watch it now. And it is just funny seeing Skeet Ulrich in both movies, and in both movies not being a great guy and dying.
Yes, yeah.
And because I read some interview, did he actually come to the Fandom Fest here in Louisville? I don't remember if he did or not.
Is that Shaggy?
No.
I don't know if Skeet came or not.
Because Matthew Lillard is here, because I've seen pictures and stuff.
So Matthew Lillard came.
Which I would have liked to have, I didn't have time, but it would have been interesting to hear him talk about Twin Peaks. But
yeah, that's why I would have been interested.
So this, just imagine if The Craft had Matthew Lillard in it for no reason, like he's in the background or something, like that would have made it even more 90s. Or Sarah Michelle Gellar, like they could have fit her in somewhere.
And she was also in Scooby-Doo too, right?
Yeah, she was
Daphne.
Yeah. But yeah, so the movie The Craft, like I said, it's on Netflix. You can go check it out. It's one of those kind of time capsule movies that you can watch, and it's like, oh, I remember that era. And let's see. So I guess we can kind of wrap up our discussion and give like what our reviews out of 10 are for The Craft. And just looking real quick on stupid Dunkirk ad. Go away. The review on IMDb is 6.3 out of 10 for the star rating. And the Metacritic is not on here. Let's see. The Rotten Tomatoes, like, and this is a movie too that I think when it came out, like, was kind of met like middle of the road reception, like wasn't loved, wasn't hated. The critics were kind of okay on it. Then like it had an audience that got into it, but it wasn't like reviled or held up as like an example of the genre. But I think that the reviews for it, so on Rotten Tomatoes, got 50%, so kind of, you know, right down the middle. So knowing that, so like the reviews being, you know, mixed to like positive, like, so I guess we can start with Derek. So like, what would you give The Craft out of 10?
I give it an 8. I mean, you know, I've really enjoyed it. It's a movie that, I mean, I've probably seen bits and pieces of it, you know, growing up and just being on TV different times. But, you know, it's like I said, a lot of it to me is like pacing and, you know, it kept my interest. It was paced well. It wasn't a long movie. I don't think it stayed its welcome. You know, it told, not that it told the best story, but it told a understandable story, one that didn't have huge glaring plot holes, which they all do, but not huge ones. You know, I like that each character had their own individual motivations. It still kind of tread the same water of like, and this happens in a lot of movies where you have like before, and then one always ends up being a little crazier than the rest. But overall, I think everything on it worked. You know, like the special effects still held up because they were practical, you know, for the most part. And I really enjoyed the casting too. And it's kind of nice to see that a movie in the 90s was able to have, you know, a lead of 4 females instead of, because I mean, that's more common now, but even then that wasn't that common, you know. And it didn't do terrible in the box office. I mean, it got made for like 14 million, made 55 million. So it's not terrible. It made its budget back.
I think the 55 was worldwide.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if that's what it made.
Well, and that was a period of time when the DVD market and the home video market existed and made money. So movies like that could make way more on video than they did at the box office. And that's a movie I didn't see in a theater, so it came out as 11. So I eventually just saw it on video or TV or something. But so it's a movie that had legs, and that, like, I haven't had cable in a while, so I'm not sure if this is something that ever shows up like on TNT or whatever, or the AMC like Fear Fest, but it would not be out of place during those types of marathons. And I mean, it's like I said, something that stuck around the popular consciousness, and being on Netflix alone helps it get back in front of a lot of people who may have forgot about it or haven't seen it. So it's something that
you have to imagine, like, if studios are ramping up for maybe doing it. It sounds like this one may be dead as of now, but if ramping up for sequels, like, their biggest thing as far as just almost like free marketing, like, is giving that movie cheap to Netflix and being like, hey, can you just stick this on there? You know, bump it to the top and we'll take a pay cut on it. You know what I mean? Just to kind of get it out there and get it back in people's minds. Like, I think that's probably a strategy that either if they don't use, that studios probably should try to use and take advantage of.
Yeah. So Sean, what would you give it out of 10?
I would think I'd probably give it a very, very solid 7. You know, only because, like, I really like this film a lot. Only because a lot of it is very standard in 90s feeling. You know what I mean? Like, it is very kind of, I guess the directing style, it's not, it almost feels like kind of by the books, and which is totally fine. But it's just like, okay, this is the way we make movies and the way we shoot movies. And, you know, it just kind of, it feels like any of those other films in the late 90s. Scream had the advantage of, you know, being, you know, really self-aware, and it brought so many different, like, story and script and concept elements that it rises above all of those other ones for me. But this one's kind of, I'm trying to think, aside from the Scream franchise, this is probably maybe my next favorite late 90s film, just because I love the concept and I love that it's not just a slasher film, or, you know, it feels original, and it's, the pacing's great. Like, I would be close to going up to 8, but yeah, super strong 7 or 7.5, something like that.
Yeah, so I think I'll have to fall in a similar range and say 7 maybe, Because some of the earlier podcasts we didn't give like numerical ratings of stuff, so it's very interesting to see what I would have given Scream or the different Scream films. But like I think like 7 to 8 because it's an enjoyable film. Like it's not like amazing cinema. It's just an enjoyable film that very well encapsulated the era, and it wasn't a slasher. It wasn't standard supernatural ghost stuff. It was witchcraft handled a little bit more modern way. And it didn't use terrible effects that aged it and made it hard to watch. And it had some good moments of actual horror stuff with, like I said, the snakes and all the creatures that I'm sure was a nightmare to shoot, with the animal wranglers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, in that aspect, like I liked all that. It hinted at, like some of the evil witchcraft side, like and all the dead sharks and everything. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that was, I'm sure at the time for like kids, like disturbing, but so it has a good range of stuff. And it's also not so obscene or whatever that that would be difficult to show to a younger crowd now. And I think it's something that you could show to somebody that's never seen it and they can still enjoy it. It's not like of the time.
It doesn't lean into those things, Derek.
Yeah.
Are you like swishing around all the stuff on your desk right now?
Cat.
It doesn't lean into those things to, you know what I mean? It doesn't lean on those just to create an effect. Like it's good because of the story and the concept and everything else. And it doesn't just take, the slasher concept and like, oh, let's kill people on screen. People like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't go for like an easy get on a lot of the elements in the film, I think. And that's again why I love it as well.
Yep. So I think that wraps up our review and discussion of The Craft. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can do a huge favor and go out and leave a review. That just helps other people find the podcast. So that helps us out. We also enjoy getting any feedback or comments on YouTube because a lot of people listen there. You can always leave feedback there. You can send us an email at podcast@housebyvegastor.com. You can also find our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo. We don't really use that much anymore. Vine is dead, but you can find links to all of our social accounts at housebyvegastor.com with Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram and Twitter being important places to follow us. But the site has links to all those. And if you want to find me on the internet specifically, you can find me on Twitter at will_droid.
But you can find me pretty much in everything major at MetaWorld Derek. We're going to just only do stuff on MySpace and Vine from now on.
Okay. I'll load up them. I was looking for information on something, and the first link popped up was a MySpace article on it. I think it was something we were talking about, William, and it was something brand new, like relatively new. I don't know who's writing articles on MySpace.
Yeah.
But before I give my social media, one other thing I found, Pop-Tarts Crunch cereal. You guys remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, that stuff ruled. Little bitty strawberry fillings inside.
Yeah.
Mine's at Blevin Sean on Twitter and at Sean2D2 on Instagram.
Yep. So that will bring this episode of the House by Vegastor podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.